don't know. It's me. It's Amid the Ruins. It's a guy who makes Dyer wave music. It's Amid the Ruins. Dyer wave music. What I've talked about in, probably 100 articles at Jay's Analysis is the implementation of the AI smart grid and the giant smart cities, which is what IBM talks about publicly building. And that's where we're going, and that's what I think we have to be really concerned about. So all of these tensions, they are part of a long-term strategy to basically get everybody moved into mega cities. They'll be forced off of land and so forth for environmental reasons, and basically concocted and invented environmental nonsense. Then you'll be stuck in some hellhole mega city in a, basically a carton-size apartment living over a Target or something, or inside of a Target or a Walmart, as I said several years ago. It's actually coming true now. There's actually Target cities. This is all part of the long-term globalist strategy. So, but to get there, you've got to have the constant clash, the constant alchemical blending and mixing and smashing together right out of Manichaeanism to produce the convergence, to produce the synthesis. And that's what's crucial in all this, and what is absolutely true from an alchemical, esoteric, philosophical, and geopolitical perspective, the fact the ruling elite seek to be post-human. jaysanalysis.com. politically. And this is what so many people in alt circles and alt-right and alt-whatever and alt-media, they all seem to think that there's like a political solution to man's problems. And really the whole of modernity is built on this neo-pagan concept of political salvation. And there is no political salvation for man, because man's problems are not essentially political, they're spiritual. The hierarchy of how man views himself in the world has been inverted. I've covered over and over and over the white papers that actually discussed how to invert and subvert that, changing images of man, things like this. So what has to happen is that the inversion has to be reverted back to the way it needs to be. And that means that first and foremost for man, it is spiritual issues. Those come first. Then we have the things like the philosophy and the family and the social issues and things like that. That comes next. And race or ethnicity can be classed as part of that. That is, in other words, you caring for your people is just a broader extension of the family, the tribe, the nation. Right? It all depends on what we mean by these words and these terms. Now, America and Americanism is the first attempt at a completely propositional nation. And this is well known. This is not debated in political theory. I think even Abraham Lincoln referred to it that way. Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis. Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis. Jay Dyer's Jay's Analysis. Jay Dyer's Jay's Analysis. In our civilization, man has dignity because he's made in the image of God. In Plato's Athens civilization, man has no dignity. So these two grounding basic principles are fighting against one another, right? In Plato's philosophy, the state is God. It's embodied in the philosopher king. It's basically like Pharaoh type stuff, right? Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, is the opposition to that. Now, does that mean that it is egalitarian and wipes everything out? Absolutely not. There ain't a bit of egalitarianism in the last 1,960 years of Christianity. And everybody who knows anything knows that. So be honest with yourselves. Why can't you, especially liberal, lying church leaders? You people are disgusting. Thus, my point is that what all this echo chamber alternative media crap is a waste of time, it's pointless. I mean, yes, it's good for waking people up, but you don't have models of how to erect civilizations. You have nothing. I'm telling you, we have an existing structure of the Orthodox Church that contains all the truths that we need to erect this great civilization. It's already been erected in the past. Now, can we go back in time and redo Byzantium? No. But we can build on what is still there, what's left, the ruins, right? Standing on the shoulders of giants, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And when you read these books, and you get an idea of civilizational studies, and you grow out of just a very naive biological racial determinism, that's not everything, man. There's more to reality, to life than race. Man has a spirit. There's obviously some aspect to which all men share manhood. Right? So does that mean that we go with the universal and we blend everybody into a giant blob of no individuals? No. That's the error of collectivism, the one in the many, dialectic. We don't do dialectics. We believe in a balance because in the triad there's a balance. In the church there's a balance. In the imperium there's a balance between the ethnos, right, and the leadership. All of this was laid out for a thousand years in the church fathers, especially the later church fathers. Look at the double-headed eagle. The Byzantine double-headed eagle tells you everything. There's your symbol. There's your esoteric symbols. Is it Masonic? No, it's not Masonic. It's the symbol of the ecumenical councils under the imperium. It's not Masonic. It's Byzantine. So think about the books that I've recommended here. If you want to take what you're yapping and spending, wasting all your time on YouTube crap, turn that off and read some of these books. Listen to my lectures where I go through these books. This is Jay Dyer, Jay's Analysis. I challenge you to read these books and come back to me and you tell me if I'm wrong. You know, one of the ways to show that relativism, which is the dominant philosophy of our day, is incorrect, is to show that it actually is inconsistent on its own ground. So while relativism tries to promote the idea of no certainty, no objectivity, it at the same time makes the claim that its own position is universally true. It's a universal statement. So anytime you make a universal claim, as we call it in logic or philosophy, this is the idea where you think that the proposition that you're proposing is absolutely true in all cases, in all worlds, et cetera, et cetera. So if you argue that there's such a thing as absolute truth, while at the same time your foundational presupposition or maxim or proposition is stating the denial of that thing, that it functions as what we call a universal contradiction. And I think that we can show that just simply by looking at its starting point, its beginning position, which claims that there's no objective truth. There are no universals. And so this then applies to epistemic relativism, metaphysical relativism, cultural relativism, and ethical relativism. All of those are kind of a package deal that starts with this position of making a universal claim that relativism itself is true, but then it also denies it in its movement, that is, in its argumentation, and in where it tries to go. It tries to say that there's nothing that's absolute or true, and so this actually functions as its strongest self-refutation. It's a reductio. It reduces to absurdity. It's a reductio. It reduces to absurdity.
Live on Alternate Current Radio, the radio show that is here to wish you a happy Valentine's Day. We were able to pull our broadcast machine and our Skype machine out of dire issues that happened just before we were supposed to go live. So, Spore, how did we do there? We all set?
We made it happen.
All right. That was stressful. It was funny because Infidel was asking, all right, what time are we going live? And I was like, well, right on time, unless something goes wrong. And almost as soon as I hit enter on unless something goes wrong, 3 computers in the studio here all got booted out of Skype and would not allow us to log back in no matter what. We had to reboot all the systems, and then one of the systems got hung up on the reboot. And then it still wouldn't let us in. And then we had to clean and delete all versions of Skype and install new versions of Skype. So here we are.
Well, you know what I think happened is you said right on time. So what is that? I don't think that's ever happened before.
They're sending you a message. It's the prelude to your ultimate deplatforming.
Yes. Oh. I was afraid of that for a moment there. I was like, what the hell did we do or say to piss off Bill Gates this time, or whoever it is?
We had our phones away from us when we were talking about that stuff.
I know. We had our Faraday suits on and everything. We were in our 1970s car with no microphones and had a Faraday egg around the car. You know, we did everything we could. All right. Well, I'm going to forego pretty much introductions and donation shout-outs and all the normal fanfare tonight. Maybe I'll do some special podcast tomorrow, take care of that house cleaning stuff. But I will say that you're listening to AlternateCurrentRadio.com, and we're simulcasting at the J. Dyer YouTube channel tonight. So if you're out there on the YouTubes, hello and what's up? Nice to see everybody out there. And, of course, we have a chat room over at AlternateCurrentRadio.com/chat. And thank you to our 70-ish patrons and anyone and everyone who has tipped the swear jar. If you want to support us, you can find out how alternatecurrentradio.com/donate, or just up there in the main menu. Look for it, click on it, find everything you need to know. And also a big thank you to Jay Dyer for filling in for Patrick Henningsen on Sunday Wire this last week. Thanks, Jay. That was a really good show.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and Basil and I had great conversations, I actually loaded the first 20 minutes up as a kind of introduction to geopolitics and regime change in the 20th century, and it's done pretty good. I think a lot of people like it. It's 95 or 6% thumbs up.
Excellent. Yeah, it was a really good show, and there's always a lot of new listeners coming in to Boiler Room and over there at your channel and Tristan's channel and all our friends' channels. So if you're new to what we do over here and you want a primer or a refresher on regime change, how intelligence agencies and bankers and foundations and other globalists are involved in regime change, last week's Sunday Wire was an excellent place to start. So Jay and Basil, thank you on behalf of ACR and 21 Wire. That was great. All right, let's get everyone else into the room here. I'm going to go over to Occupied Territory, California. Go ahead and hit that unmute button. You know who you are. Up next, Randy J. joining us here in the Boiler Room once again. Randy J., welcome back to the Boiler Room. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. You know what? If you didn't say unhit the mute button, you know who you are. You'd still be talking to dead air right now, man. That's funny. Hey, good to be back.
All right, glad to have you on the show, and looking forward to whatever we're going to get into tonight. It's a mystery to me. I've got nothing in my notes because I've been doing other stuff all week, so it's going to be fun. It's going to be one of those light and loose shows, and we'll just see what happens. We do have a pretty crazy icebreaker, and then I'll kick it to the group after that. And back over to Jay's microphone, of course, because the one and only Jamie Hanshaw is joining us. Jamie, welcome back to the Boiler Room. How you doing?
Hi, very good. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Anytime. We're stoked to have you on the line. And happy Valentine's Day to you two over there.
Thank you.
Thank you. We love you too, both. All.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all love.
We were just
We're making the little
today.
heart signs, little handy heart signs. That's right.
We were just
Very
talking today
Valentine-y.
about how everybody's from California.
I'm from California. Yeah,
I'm Hemet.
originally.
Hemet in the house.
All right.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Well,
Just shout
good
out
luck.
Hemet.
Hey,
Yes.
what's that?
Did someone just shout out Hemet?
I did, yes. Hemet,
I've
California.
never heard Hemet shout out before. God bless you.
That's a first. All right, Hemet in the house.
Am I the
Cool.
first person that you know that knows where Hemet is? Probably. Maybe. I don't know. Okay.
Well, wasn't somebody
Carry
else
on,
from
carry on.
Riverside on there?
I used to live in
Yeah,
Riverside
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you know Hemet.
when I was a little
Yeah,
kid.
Riverside. Riverside's my old stomping grounds.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Well, I just heard Max over there. Max is back.
Hey.
Our geopolitical media maniac. Welcome back, Max. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate another chance to be on your show.
All right, we're glad to have you, man. It's going to be a fun show, and it looks like we're going to go to Infidel Pharaoh up next. Infidel Pharaoh, welcome back to the Boiler Room. How you doing this evening?
Doing good, man. I have a question for you.
What's that?
What do single people say on Valentine's Day?
Tell us.
Happy Independence Day.
All right, there you go. One for all the single people out there.
You guys
on
remember
Valentine's
the
Day.
Michael Jordan cards that you give when you're in grade school?
Yes.
And do you remember the ones?
Yeah.
The ones that are like if you're a fat loser kind of kid or ugly kid or whatever, you get the "I want to be your friend." You're cool. Let's be friends card.
Right.
So I just want to stress to the Boiler Room crowd that none of you are fat and ugly. You are all my actual Valentines. So you all
right.
you all get the "You're cool" card and the "You're my love" card.
All right. Nice.
Feel the love in the air.
Yeah. It's a very
Can you feel the love tonight? How's it go? How's it go? Well, how's the rest of it go? I don't know anymore.
Peace, the evening breeze.
The peas in the evening breeze. Peas? Never mind.
The peas?
I don't know.
We're all like peas in a pod over here. All right. I hope I didn't forget to add anyone to the call. I think I got everybody today. It was kind of a hectic scramble to get on here, but I got one more person I got to introduce, and that's the one and only, the lovely co-host in studio here, Lovely Spore. Happy Valentine's Day, and welcome back to the Boiler Room.
Happy Valentine's Day, my love.
All right. Yes. It's been a good one so far. I'm glad we got on air. I was afraid we were going to have to cancel at the last minute.
That would have ruined the whole day.
I know. That would have sucked.
Yeah, we made it.
All right. Well, congrats to us. Pats on everybody's back. Hugs all around. Enough with the love fest. Let's get into some ice breaking.
Oh, just before, I want to make sure, did everybody get a special introduction? Because I had to go out and fiddle the doggies.
I think so. We got Randy J. We got Jay and Jamie. We got Max. We got Infidel. And we got you. Where is he?
Tristan.
I'm here.
Oh, this
here, guys.
new Skype is so freaking weird. Okay, so he's the only one in the dead center of my Skype. Thank you, Spore.
Yes, I actually know about Hammett too. I don't know if my mic unmuted earlier, but I was born near Riverside, but I lived in Riverside for many years as a kid. So, shout out to Hammett.
951.
Hammett. Riverside was 909 when I was there. Then it changed to 951 when I left.
Oh.
Yeah, they say all the best meth comes from Hammett.
It does. It's meth and grandmas. That's what's come from him.
It's Hemeth.
No, and all their users from Temecula. No, I just added that.
All right, yeah. California shout-outs all around. Spore, you were saying?
Shout out to Murder Mountain.
Oh, yeah. Murder Mountain in the Hizzy. That's right. Humboldt County. All right. Well, that was fun. Tristan, I'm sorry I almost ran right over you there. My bad. That's Tristan Haggard of Primal Edge Health. Everybody, welcome back to Boiler Room.
Yeah, it's an honor to be on. Thanks, man.
Yeah. I blame Skype for that. I was looking at everybody's icons, and for some reason, everybody's up in the corner except you, the one that I should have seen front and center.
No, it's cool, dude. It's all right. On Valentine's Day, whatever, man. It's all good.
Yeah. Right.
Not mad or anything.
I'm
not offended.
You just got like the worst tasting Valentine candy right there. The one that's like...
just ruined my Valentine's Day. Whatever. It's all good. All good. Boiler Room Valentine's Day. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. You got the most brutal introduction of all. Nothing.
I'm sitting here with my dog that still smells like a skunk. My dog got skunked like a week ago, and she still smells.
Still smelling it, huh?
Still smelling.
Did you try the magic mix of like hydrogen peroxide and Dawn soap?
No, I've been afraid to do that because she escaped about 3 days ago. Both of my dogs escaped and they went on like an 18-hour adventure off in the woods somewhere. And they returned and she was just a mess. Her skin's all cut up and I don't know what she was doing. She's obviously past some barbed wire fences. So yeah, she's a mess. So we're just we're snuggling up, giving Daisy a little bit of Valentine's Day love. I guess she needed attention, so she left for a couple days.
Yeah, I'm glad they came home, and maybe it's a good thing that they left stinking like skunk. Nobody wanted to mess with them, I'm sure.
Yeah, Daisy was getting a little fat. I think she lost the weight she needed to lose.
She went on a walkabout and a fast.
Yeah, she's been on a 3-day fast, and she's also fasting from moving, basically, for the last 3 days. She came back exhausted. It looked like she found a deposit of sandpaper and just dug in it for a whole day. I don't know what she was doing. But the other dog was fine. So, yeah, mysteries of dog life.
All right, cool. Okay, Spore, where's the button? Let's do it. Let's break some ice. All right, what are we kicking off with today?
The Poop Wizard.
The Poop Wizard.
Yeah, I don't know who put this in our chat. This was a couple of days ago.
Some psycho put this in our chat.
Going so fast, I cannot keep up with it lately, but the Poop Wizard stuck out for me.
Spore sounds like she's far away in a bathroom. We can't really hear what she's saying.
Let's try that.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I guess the mute button helps.
Yeah, it does. Don't worry, though. The audience was able to hear you fine, except maybe Jay's audience. Sorry about that, YouTube. Okay. I just fixed it. My bad.
All right. Yeah, so I was just saying that one of our Boiler Room regulars put this in our chat a couple of days ago, and I don't know who did it, but the Poop Wizard stuck out, and I couldn't help but investigate. So I think that so this guy is from Australia. He's from Sydney, and he is bringing awareness about the stigma about male buttholes.
Oh God.
And poop. Because a lot of people think that buttholes are dirty.
There will be no foul language in this video, by the way, and lots of puns and double entendres. Are you ready, Spore?
Let's do it. Yeah, there's a quick video, and just to give you guys some context, this guy has smeared poop all over his face.
Yeah, I'll link it on the show page if anyone has the cojones or the desire to see this. But the audio should do you just fine. Here we go.
I wanted to hold solidarity with my sisters by actually getting shit-faced with full pride, respect the rectum. And I think it's one of these really unifying things. When we can actually reconnect with our own bodies and not feel shamed about our poo, being poo positive, or as I like to say, positive, then we can actually finally start getting over the separation from our own earth, our own mud, and therefore the earth of Mother Nature. So for all of those who want to have solidarity, protect the rectum and be positive, I encourage you to get faced with me and maybe celebrate creatively. So I've also created what I call fecal fractals. So it's just, it's amazing the microcosm and macrocosm that we can find. And for me, just looking at this, I'm obviously seeing universes. And I'm seeing the way that the little is connected to the whole. So stay human and love your bums, and we all have them.
To what hole?
That's too much. That's a troll. That's active. That's written. That's genius. That can't be real. That's too much.
Okay, so Tristan, I actually did a little investigation on this guy, and there are people the video that I found because I had to do a search on it. It wasn't the one that was put into our Skype. The video I found put his name on it, and his name is Atlas Talisman, and he's considered a positive speaker.
A positive speaker?
Wait, so he's really supposedly legit? Does he have anything else? Does he have other material out there?
Okay, so I didn't get too far into. What I found was his Facebook, and I didn't get too far down, but it seems pretty authentic. And the other video that he's 100% supporting is this one that I did not watch. It's a 20-minute video of some other guy stating that that every man needs to be anally penetrated. But
I call bullshit.
Yeah.
No,
check it out, dude.
That's insane.
These are major, the people that are he's got a big following, and the people that are giving comments under this are under this particular video that you just listened to are oh my God, I love you. This is so awesome. And one guy was oh, but really, but have you ever heard of pink eye?
Yeah, diphtheria. Other
that line about
camp plagues.
I like his respect the rectum line. That sounds like a Wu-Tang song.
Yeah.
You best respect your rectum. Ghost face. Get your blast to the height first. Respect your rectum.
I'll put it in our Skype, but he has a pretty serious Facebook that looks relatively authentic and really quirky.
Here's some great comments under the actual YouTube video here. First one, WTF is wrong with this guy? Why can't he just keep his poop stored in little jars like a normal person?
What?
Here's another one. Shit-faced yet still sober. That's a first.
Someone in Jay's chat says this is great analysis.
Analysis. Oh.
Yeah. All right, I don't know what to say about that. I'm just going to leave that one.
I would say maybe Jay would expand on this or agree. We talked about Crowley a couple episodes ago, and Timothy Leary and some of these other characters and kind of the beliefs and this kind of Crowleyan society that we have. But Crowley was all about doing the things that disgusted you most, and basically it was a form of yoga where he would connect with the most disgusting things you could think of, act them out and do them and enjoy them, right? So that's where a lot of this gross sex magic stuff comes from.
Right. There's a tradition in Far Eastern, one of the paths, they have a left-hand, right-hand path version, and one of the traditions in that Far Eastern thought is that you're supposed to embrace the worst, most degenerate aspects as part of the transformation of your psyche, and that's part of that left-hand path. And it's actually this is real. It's not a fake thing. It's in the Victor Tremonti book that is several hundred pages. It kind of exposes the Dalai Lama as a scam. It's a good book, but it talks about this, and there's a whole chapter on this certain pathway. And that is definitely what Crowley borrowed in part from Far Eastern mysticism when he tried to blend it with Western Hermeticism. And that is very real. That's why they try to, in some of those occult type things, they do a version of that kind of spirit cooking where they blend not just the menstrual stuff, but other bodily excretions as well. So it's all very real. And in fact, we talked about, we had a video that I think we put in the chat that some Protestant guy did that was pretty good, where he actually shows that the Old Testament in the book of Numbers, when they talk about Baal Peor, when the Israelites were joined to Baal Peor, the word is the Lord of the open holes. And so this actually it's the same type of kind of degrading, fecal filthiness.
Gnarly. I'm slowly. I apologize, everyone. I'm slowly degenerating into Beavis here. But Jay, you did say they do those types of rituals. Yeah. That was cool. All right, we are spiraling out of control here. Infidel Pharaoh, what do you think, man?
Well,
speechless.
What can you say?
Speechless.
All right, I don't blame you. Randy J, what about you, man? You seen any poop wizards out there in California?
I got nothing to say.
All right, we've totally stumped everybody. All right, excellent. Well, I'm happy to move along.
Filthy mouths out.
I think so. I think we may need to wash the audience.
My ears out with your filth.
Yeah, I was going to say we need to wash the entire audience's ears out after that one.
Wants to get shit faced.
Hey, it's Valentine's Day, so you never know. Okay, well, that was an interesting one, Spore. Whatever degenerate that was that dropped that into our chats.
One of our close friends.
Yeah, one of you awesome people. Thank you, and thank you and curse you at the same time. And happy Valentine's Day. Okay, let's get off of this one quick before we start losing people. All right. Over to Jay and Jamie. You guys had one you wanted to get in there early in the show. Tell us all about it.
No, I don't want to talk about that. Now that I've found out who it's associated with, I don't want to talk about that nonsense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's avoid it then if it's a snoozer.
But I was
thinking, I mean.
We did talk about last time the Shyamalan films. Did anybody remember or get to see the rest of the Shyamalan stuff? I mean, we don't have to talk about that, but that was what
I've got them on queue, man. I didn't get the time to watch them. I did watch an episode of Utopia to refresh on that. I watched the first episode of Utopia, but nothing else.
Okay. Well, we're still not done with Utopia, so we'll work through that too.
All right, cool. Yeah, well, Spore and I are ready on the Shyamalama Ding Dong trilogy there at any point. But
and the Utopia.
And Utopia. We actually crammed through that last night, so we're good.
Well, do you want to go ahead and talk about it, and we just fuck Tristan?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even care. I mean, you guys could save me the time. I don't like spoilers. I might just mute it for a little bit, because I've got them on queue. I plan to watch them.
We could probably talk about it without even spoiling it. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, we can.
Just spoil it. I don't care.
Well, no, there's only one part in the part 3 that has the twist that you can talk about the secret society aspect without mentioning the twist. So yes, we can do it without spoiling it.
Okay, cool. So just to set this up for anyone that hasn't seen these movies, M. Night Shyamalan did a movie called Unbreakable, like 15 years ago or something like that, starring Bruce Willis. And the general concept was it also had Samuel L. in it. And Samuel L. is like a evil genius sort of guy. And
somewhat of a superhero, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's sort of a different take on the superhero theme.
It's like a superhero that doesn't know he's a superhero kind of thing, or he's denying his superhero-ness. He thinks he's just a normal guy, and he's trying to stay in his little bubble. It's like a psychological unfolding of this guy's real abilities and powers. And then Samuel L. Jackson is this little crippled black guy called Glass, who's really easily broken. I forget really most of the plot of the film other than that, though. I remember liking it a lot.
Well, I recently watched it, so I'm fresh on it. Yeah, so basically Bruce Willis, he has there's this train wreck, and he survives it. He's the lone survivor, and this kind of makes him notorious, but he's able to play it down, and he kind of, continues his normal life, and then, progressively realizes he's got this super strength. And like you said, at the same time, the evil genius character is the Samuel L. Jackson, and he plots to stage a large-scale attack on an event, a sports-related event, and of course Bruce Willis foils this whole thing, and we realize that Glass was the bad guy, right? So that's the spoiler for Unbreakable. But yeah, there's a lot of these kind of superhero tropes, and so Shyamalan was trying to play with that and give his version of superhero stuff because he's a superhero fan or whatever, comic book fan. So then Split, which I assume most people have seen Split probably, was alternate personalities in James McAvoy, and I thought Split was really good. Most people favored it, and the plot was, of course, that he kidnaps these girls, high school girls, and he's gonna kill them. He's a serial killer. And that's because he's possessed not only by a series of alternate identities, but also the central alternate identity, which appears to be a demon. Right? So that's what Split was. And, of course, the chick from Witch, I don't remember her name, but she gets free, and she was kidnapped by him, and she was abused and molested, so she identified with him. And that's the reason that he didn't kill her, is because she wasn't weak. So then at the end of Split, if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, Split is, surprise, surprise, we always have the Shyamalan twist. Split was a sequel to Unbreakable, and nobody guessed that because it's not until the very end that you see a news story at the very close of the film about Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mr. Glass, and that they have housed the James McAvoy multiple personality possessed character in the same mental institute as Glass. And then, lo and behold, Bruce Willis turns his face at the diner, and you see him looking up at the TV, and you realize, oh, crap. What do you know? Shyamalan twisted me. You turned me right round, Shyamalan. Right round, baby, right round. In that twist, because it was a sequel
that
to...
That was a good
That was a good
twist.
Nobody saw that.
Seen that movie. I mean, I definitely was... taken downstream, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck because I was a fan of Unbreakable. It was like it really had, I felt the intended effect full on when we saw that in the theater, and I was immediately excited for the realization that, holy crap, this is going to be a trilogy that continues where the movie with Bruce Willis 15 years ago left off. So I was pretty stoked and well affected at that point. But Spore, you hadn't seen Unbreakable, so you were like, why are you reacting this way? And then I brought you home and we watched Unbreakable, and then it all clicked. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, just seeing that the third one, Glass, wow, that was the best trilogy I think I can think of ever seeing, honestly, because there was somewhat
better than Star Wars? Dude, what about Lord of the Rings?
Yeah. Anyways, like I said.
The Godfather? The Godfather is...
Yeah, The Godfather.
I thought it was, they were so unrelated, but the way that he brought them all together, and of course, the last one was so different from the first two. I just thought it was kind of brilliant. And to be perfectly frank and honest, Jay, you're probably gonna laugh, but I was near tears at the end of part 3. I was emotionally after watching the first two, and then this one, I had really felt kind of attached to these characters, and it was
and something bad happened.
Which I'm not gonna
I really liked Unbreakable. I thought it was better than most real superhero movies. I thought it was really good.
Me too. Yeah. It was much more believable and psychological than the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the stuff we get from there.
Yeah,
I thought it was better than Shyamalan's other films. Most of his other films. I think it's probably my favorite Shyamalan film.
I agree.
I think the best is probably Signs. I think that's probably his best. In my view, this is best.
Signs would be second best for sure,
Yeah.
and then
Signs
after
was
that,
fun.
The Village.
Now the thing about the new one was the secret society black ops element. I did like that part, which I didn't expect that. So I was kind of thrown for a loop both in Split and in Glass. I didn't expect that there's a group, we'll say, who strives to keep people down. I thought that was an interesting element. Now, Shyamalan gave a interview where he cucked out and said that, my movie is about globalism, which was kind of ridiculous. I don't know how there was globalism in that movie, but maybe he was just saying that for the interview. I don't know. But the plot of the movie I thought was interesting with the secret society element. So a lot of people didn't like Glass, but people also hate on Shyamalan just because they hate on Shyamalan. And somebody was saying, and I forget what the reasoning was today. There's something to do with like he started making people mad a long time ago because he wouldn't SAG, Screen Actors Guild unions and stuff. He fell out with them, so then he started getting all these bad reviews. I'm not saying that the Shyamalan movies are all necessarily good, but
hating Shyamalan is makes you a normie, just like liking Star Wars a lot.
Exactly.
You know, it's how you.
That's a good way to put it. Right. It's a good way to put it. And but yeah, so there's essentially a secret black ops organization that exists to keep people down, and you could look at that almost kind of like the way the social justice types, they don't want. Like in their mindset, if somebody is better than you, or if somebody is more talented or has a better skill set, they get ahead by knocking you down and destroying you. So I like that aspect of it, of the film.
Yeah, definitely.
Unbreakable. The direction in that, I haven't seen the other two in the trilogy, but the directing of, that's a great film. I think Unbreakable is really good. I'm remembering a lot of the images now, and I haven't seen this movie in, I don't know, 5-6 years maybe. It's a good movie.
It is.
Oh, yeah. You're gonna love the other two.
I didn't realize they made two more. I thought they made one more. I don't know.
Yeah, Split kind of snuck under the radar, I think, because it wasn't really advertised as being connected to anything, so that you could have the effect at the end for people that were fans of Unbreakable. So, and I don't know, Split was
right?
Say again?
I mean, with the exception of the ending there, Split was pretty much standalone, wasn't it?
It could be, yeah. When Split came out, actually, I went on Carlwood's show, and we had a pretty good lengthy chat about Split that came out pretty good, I thought. So if anybody's interested for my fuller breakdown of Split, you can listen to the Higher Side Chats show that I did.
Nice.
Right, yeah, definitely.
The main actor from that one, wow. Yeah.
Did you see? You talking about James McAvoy? Yeah, he's great at playing all those alters, right? Like he can switch in the midst of the scene through about 6 or 7 different alters. That was pretty phenomenal acting wise. But did you guys remember that chick is the chick from The Witch? Did you ever see that?
We saw The Witch. We saw it in the theater when it first came out.
Oh yes.
I didn't connect that though until after the movie.
I did not connect that until you just said that now, Jay.
Yeah, which is a pretty esoteric film. Yeah, it's a pretty esoteric movie.
Definitely.
We talked about that on Boiler Room a couple of years ago.
I bet we did.
Yep. That's right. What was the goat's name? He was my favorite actor of the year.
Black Phillip.
Black Phillip the goat. He won my Actor of the Year award.
Was that Shyamalan?
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay.
I don't remember who directed it, but yeah, she was in it.
That was a weird ending too.
Wait, the wasn't The Witch the guy that did Annihilation?
I don't remember.
Did you guys see Annihilation?
I don't think I did actually.
I don't either.
Okay, I made a video on it last week. It's that newest Natalie Portman sci-fi thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw the trailer for that, and I saw your video come out, but I didn't watch it because I didn't want to get spoiled on it. Is that still in the theaters? Can we still see that, or do we have to wait now?
No, it wasn't in the theaters that long, and it was an Amazon Prime production, but I think it did come out in theaters. And so it's the guy that did Ex Machina, not the guy that did The Witch. I'm wrong. The guy that did The Witch is some guy who I don't know any of these other movies, but the Witch, or not The Witch.
Annihilation.
Yeah, it's Alex Garland. Yeah, that's the guy. He's the guy that did Ex Machina and sorry, Deus Ex Machina, because people bitch in the chat when I don't pronounce it perfectly. But he did 28 Days Later. He did Ex Machina, and he did Sunshine. Did you guys ever see maybe Sunshine?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm tracking now.
Yeah, that dude. And I thought Sunshine was okay. It's kind of stupid. I mention it in the analysis of Annihilation, but basically, if you're looking for a, like a 2001 meets, I don't know, I forget. Somebody had a perfect explanation for it. Basically, if you want to, if you're in the mood for something 2001, Annihilation is tolerable, but it's also really dumb in a kind of, social justice type thing going on. But it does have some weird esoteric stuff in it. So I thought it was worth an analysis. So
better than Bird Box, I hope.
And would you say Annihilation is better than Bird Box, Jamie?
No.
You think they're equal dumb?
I liked Bird Box a little bit better.
That was dumb.
Annihilation was dumb.
All right.
Their first fight.
It must be in the ballpark.
On Valentine's Day.
Oh, burn. Okay, well,
Man,
anyway,
guys,
they're both dumb. They both have a lot of the social justice nonsense. So, but
and if you guys keep spoiling movies, I'm gonna have to start calling the show the spoiler.
We're not spoiling. We're helping you avoid these. We're the poo wizards that help you steer clear of box office madness.
Box office turds.
Box office stink bombs.
Give a shout out to Upside. That was like a solid, really good movie. With no as far as I could tell, there was no social justice twists or anything like that. It was just kind of like a story of a couple people's lives, and there was funny moments and sad moments, and it was a really good one.
What movie?
And then alternatively, I would like to give a medium shout out to, what do we see? The Cold Pursuit.
Oh, yeah, Cold Pursuit, the new Liam Neeson revenge movie.
Yeah, that was pretty ridiculous, but entertaining.
Lots of plot holes, but entertaining.
Liam Neeson running.
Yeah, he'll find you, and he will hurt you. It's off. All right. Well, some people love it when we do movie time, and then there's always the complainers. So I know I don't understand why we get hate mails when we talk about movies. We have fun and interesting talks about movies and TV shows. So
and you kind of brought this up with Utopia, the series, and we'll talk about it more once Jay has seen it. But man, that was good. That was a really good.
That was a doozy.
Y'all out there listening should check out Utopia. So when we talk about it,
yeah, let's get the listening audience to get out there and find it. You may have to do some interweb foo to find a copy of Utopia. I don't know if it's on any streaming services. It's dense with conspiracy topics, as Tristan said. Tristan put it really well in our chat room. It's dense.
It's on the secret sites, like the free secret streaming sites, which everybody knows about.
Yeah, in most countries, you can download stuff without repercussions. Where I live, it's legal to go to Pirate Bay, where you can find Utopia.
We do not live in that country here, so we would not be able to.
We're always
not do that. That's
we're always legal.
We would never.
We're legal and lawful over here, bro.
I know. Well, I'm the Wild West over here, guys. Living dangerously here. On the high seas.
Who or what is in Utopia? I just punched it up, and there's like a few versions of them floating around.
Nobody, a bunch of BBC people, but it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's
2013, 2014 from Channel 4 in the UK was Utopia.
Got it. It's got something to do with, quote, the network or something like this?
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that's the one.
Yep, that's the one. So listeners out there, get caught up. It's only 2 seasons, and I think it's only 6 episodes per season, so you could knock it out in a good binge or 2, probably.
Yeah, my only complaint about it is I have a hard time understanding all that accented.
The Britisher accent can be difficult with some of these actors.
You need like volume high or like some headphones on or some, you know, what do they call it when they write the words at the bottom?
Subtitles may assist.
Apparently, there's a new True Detective too. That might.
Oh yeah, we've been watching
that.
Yep,
I've been watching that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to get the feeling for where that's headed. It's very interesting. I think we're on episode 6 now. We're doing it weekly since they're coming out weekly.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, although I've not seen the last one. I've seen all but 6, but I kind of thought it was going to go in this direction, and it's been a little boring in the middle. But again, I haven't seen the latest episode. I don't think the idea is terrible of the guy with the dementia trying to put back the puzzle pieces from an old case. And did you notice they even mentioned the FrankKlin cover-up?
They did, yeah. They mentioned the FrankKlin cover-up, and it appears to be loosely based on. I think there's going to be a twist. And they've shifted the timeline and the location, but it's loosely based on, for anyone that's familiar with the case of the West Memphis 3, which was outlined in the Paradise Lost documentary series. It's along those lines, at least as in the ramp-up phase.
What was the series called?
There's a documentary series called Paradise Lost. I believe there are 3 or 4 editions of it.
And the other show that was referencing it or that was based on it?
Oh, True Detective, dude.
True Detective. Okay,
sorry. Yeah, True Detective is the one we're talking about, which is.
Did they reference the FrankKlin cover-up on HBO?
Yeah, can you believe that?
That's really weird.
Well, I mean, if you got to see True Detective, and I thought season 2 was great too, but season 1 of True Detective was like hardcore, like trafficking, ritual crime stuff. So I think everybody was kind of shocked when that came out. I wrote an analysis of it. It got like 50,000 views. It was crazy because I put because Vigilant Citizen actually had done an analysis, and I said, you know what, I'm going to top that stinker. I was choosing my language carefully here. So I put about 17 straight hours into writing a kick butt True Detective season 1 analysis, and I pulled it off. So yeah, that one's really, and then season 2 is really neat because it's about the mob and California and Bohemian Grove. So what we have in season 3 is so far referenced the FrankKlin cover-up and human trafficking type stuff, but I think Hester's right. They're going to tie in like this West Memphis 3 kind of loosely based type of thing. But somebody was making an argument, I forget who it was, somewhere, that there will be a connection between the seasons. Now, because I followed True Detective really closely, I was wondering if this wasn't going to be the case after season 2 because they kept referencing Vietnam. So there's a reference to Vietnam, and I think old Matthew McConaughey himself says he was in Vietnam when he was doing his drugs and partying. He talks about Vietnam. And then in season 2, Vietnam briefly comes up between some chat and conversation. And the black guy, get this, did you catch that he was a reconnaissance, what do they call him, like a recon sniper in Vietnam, a.k.a. Phoenix program? That's exactly what that is. And I actually looked that up on some military websites to make sure the recon sniper or whatever his role was actually was part of the Phoenix program. So he is that's also tied in there, in other words. And the King of Carcosa, the Yellow King of Carcosa, that is, of course, central to season 1. Some people are arguing that this is being hinted at in season 3. So that piqued my interest a bit, although I've not seen for sure if that's the case.
So McConaughey came back for season 3, but he wasn't in the second series.
No, he's just producing. He's been producing seasons 2 and 3.
Right.
So Colin Farrell is the one that takes center stage in season 2.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. It was Rachel McAdams, Vince Vaughn, Colin Farrell, and
I never got to finish season 2.
I think it's worth watching. It has there's an excellent sequence when she goes to the Eyes Wide Shut party, and they shoot it like it's over the rainbow, and the old Hollywood style Somewhere Over the Rainbow Wizard of Oz stuff starts playing while she's tripping. And she has to sneak out of this party with all these like Bohemian Grove elites. It's pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's definitely worth catching up on. And Jay, your analysis on that was great. People can find that at your website. There's also
a season
audio
2
version.
There is, and there's also a season 2 written analysis that I reposted actually this week on Twitter. And I will again be looking for, you know, if season 3 is worth it, you know. There's a little bit of SJW in season 3, which is kind of annoying. But at the same time, they've also kind of been poking fun at it with Steven Dorff and the black guy kind of making jokes in the car. So it's not as SJW as I thought, except for the fact that the Indian, if you remember, the Indian who runs home after all of the redneck racists persecuting the poor Indian guy. And then he blows them all up, right? Anyway, I just spoiled that part for everybody. But, you know, that's not a major plot point, I don't think, so far. But
yeah, you could see that one coming.
Yeah, you could kind of tell that was going to happen. And but if you recall, the King of Carcosa was apparently some version of the devil or a demon. And spoiler alert, I mean, again, this is, if you saw season 1, that's who the big redneck dude was kind of worshiping out there in the Spanish fort, if you remember that part.
Mm-hmm, right.
Yeah. So there's this weird reference to the King of Carcosa, and Carcosa was some literary thing to, I don't know, it's something basically voodoo devil type stuff. So going from memory, but it'll be interesting to see if they do tie in, you know, these threads of Vietnam and you know, ritual stuff, drugs, human trafficking. There seems to be these common, you know, themes throughout all 3 seasons so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even been replaying the audio from your previous analyses on the 24/7 stream over here. I've got all those in the broadcaster, so they are rotating in and out over here at alternatecurrentradio.com. And if you're out there listening, you can get the Spreaker application or go to Spreaker.com and find all alternatecurrentradio.com shows and simulcasted shows, such as Jay's analysis, where you'll find a bunch of that kind of stuff. So you can stream the 24/7 stream if you want to be surprised, or catch the things that are replaying that have been recently aired.
Well, by the way,
and some old classics.
Did we notice that they're hinting that the church has an involvement, the Catholic stuff? Because if you remember, if you saw the documentary that was the Discovery Channel thing that they suppressed, it was the FrankKlin cover-up referenced Boys Town, and Boys Town is of course a Catholic charity that was involved in trafficking and was sending the kids to Washington, if you remember that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the True Detective season 3 is mentioning that. They've talked about, I don't think they mentioned Boys Town, but they mentioned they're questioning the priests and the kids. You know, they were in that praying pose, just like the son who was killed was in that praying pose with his rosary.
Yeah.
Right, and the priest is just like totally aloof and disinterested in helping the detectives find out what happened to these kids whatsoever. So you're right. We're definitely feeling the foreshadowing there of some pretty creepy church involvement, and maybe some local or state government involvement, and who knows what else is going to come into this. I don't know if I'm correct about this, but I think we looked, and I hope I'm not wrong, but it looked like there might be 18 episodes of this season. Somebody can correct me if I am wrong, but the last 2 seasons only had 8 episodes. So if I'm right, they more than doubled the amount of story that's going to be in this one.
Are they 30-minute episodes, or those 18 one-hour episodes?
1 hour.
Hour.
Yeah.
By the way,
time for this? That's crazy. 18 hours.
Yeah.
By the way, Hester, I want to remind everybody that on this sort of dark topic here, I don't mean to be too nasty, but you know, we had talked about real and true and false Satanism, and we talked about the fact that, you know, I made a comment that the real Satanists tend to be in the churches, and lo and behold, 2 days after that, the news story comes out of this Father Feuker, somewhere out of Idaho, sentenced to, because of his Satanism and porn, sentenced to 25 years in prison. And not only that, but he was actually doing things in the communion stuff. In other words, his fluids were making their way into the communion wine, right?
No.
Oh, nar.
No.
Wow.
Which again is
That's
part.
so evil.
Yeah, which is harkening back to what Tristan was
Go ahead and
talking
finish,
about.
Jay, and then over to Tristan or Max or whoever.
Well,
that was.
and the reason I say this is because I've made the comment that these people are the real villains, and they will infiltrate and find positions of power in the churches. It's not the teenagers out in the woods, playing around with, Anton. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing to do if you're a teenager, but I'm saying that they will at times foist this stuff on the teens when these kind of guys are the real villains, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, I love the way you put that on your social media, where it was like, yeah, it's the dudes in the church, not so much the kids in the basements. I was cracking up when I saw that. It's so true, though. It's so true.
Well, how many times does this have to come out before people can, start figuring that out?
Seriously, man, this has been an ongoing theme for our whole lives. It's just crazy. Just slight correction before we go over to Tristan or Max there. I was wrong. There will only be 8 episodes in this season, but they're numbering them like overall numbers. So when I saw 18, they were actually talking about episode 2 of season 3, which is episode 18 of the entire 3 seasons. So I'll take that back.
Nice. That's much less daunting to actually get started on it now. Yeah, that's great. That's so crazy. That article that you shared, and those facts, that's so shocking. I mean, it's just the most deep evil that you could ever consider. To imagine the type of person and what other types of things that person must be doing and experiencing to be, putting his bodily fluids in, communion. That's just horrible. And it reminded me of a few years ago. There were some of these guys. There were a few YouTube channels with some of these like supposed ex-Satanist guys.
Yeah.
And I think like Bill Schneeblin, remember that guy? He claimed he was like.
I was in the Illuminati, and he talks with his like his nose is all stopped up, and he said that he was a werewolf. He says I was in the order of a werewolf and in the order of a vampire.
Exactly. He said he was a vampire. And he was a Mormon and Catholic priest, apparently high-level Mormon and Catholic. I don't know. His story was outlandish.
I don't remember him saying he was a Catholic priest. I read a bunch of his books back in the day when I started researching the occult. I know he claimed he was a Wiccan high priest. He was in the Church of he was in the church, LDS Church, Mormonism. Let's see, Wicca. What else?
Freemasonry.
Freemason. Now that I can believe, because there's a lot of, it's known that there's cross pollination there. There's a lot of cross membership. But yeah, but he walks around wearing a yarmulke, he was, where do we think?
I don't know if I believe him, but the story it was just one of these memories that popped up. But it is definitely palpable that somebody would take those types of positions, and it's very. We talked about Crowley earlier, and it's kind of even more evil than what Crowley was doing in certain regards.
Well, you notice what they do is a lot of clowns and a lot of con men will come out and act like they are these high level people and they're going to expose this stuff, and they're just jokers. But there's also situations where people can come out and have fake front exposés, like the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, which is Dr. Morton Downey Jr. And when he founded that was actually founded with CIA money to put out a bunch of fake stuff and to say that, it's all the memories, it's all false. So they actually kind of wanted a satanic panic because it made it look silly. And it literally came out that Dr. Orn and his wife, they had abused their daughter, and they got in trouble for actually being the abusers. And so if you look into who set up the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, it's obvious it was set up by CIA people. And it was to cover up for a lot of what they were doing through MKUltra.
A lot of that satanic stuff, the satanic panic stuff, was in the 80s, and you can go back on YouTube. You can watch a lot of the old clips of Oprah and I don't know, and maybe Yeah, talking to like Zena LeVay.
Yeah.
But then what's funny is also we talked about West Memphis 3, and you mentioned that detail. That's kind of a freaky time too, because something else I was looking into a little bit more deeply this week was the whole Norwegian black metal scene with this new film coming out, Lords of Chaos, with Macaulay Culkin's little brother, Rory Culkin.
Hesher was talking about that a few shows back.
Yeah.
What do you make of that, Tristan? Are before you go on, are you new to all that data? Was that a new data dump to you?
I had heard about Varg burning the churches, and somebody had told me that he stabbed his bandmate, and he was just super metal. That's all I knew about him, right? It's just one vague story from a friend of mine who used to be into black metal. But I'd heard some of the music. I never was too interested in the black metal stuff. Not that I don't like metal, but just it wasn't the type of I don't know. It just didn't catch my eyes or ears rather. But the story is insane. These guys were getting into like ritual magic. A lot of them were into Crowley and stuff. Some of them were confessing this like LaVeyan Satanism, but then others of them didn't like the LaVeyan Satanism angle, and they were more into the neo-pagan stuff. So there were these kind of, it seemed like there was this split within the movement between these kind of Euronymous being into communism and Varg being into neo-paganism and kind of Nazism almost. It's just a funny time and kind of a weird little microcosm of what you see going on the internet, going on now. And Varg is still online. Some of these, it's a crazy story. Anybody who's interested in looking into like the history of Norwegian black metal, it was in like 1993 when this happened. Wasn't that the year that the West Memphis 3 thing went down too?
It is, exactly. They were tried and convicted in 94, and in 93 was when that went down. So it's all very contemporary. And one thing I forgot to mention, I got some cool emails from some listeners when we talked about that a few weeks back. So thanks everybody that's emailed, and apologies to anyone I haven't gotten back to. But I forgot to mention that there's a big like split amongst the metal community when it comes to this movie, because there's a lot of people that feel like, oh, Hollywood shouldn't touch this, and and Varg of course is complaining about it because, I mean, obviously anyone if they're gonna, like, imagine someone made a movie about you and didn't consult you or ask you anything. I mean, obviously,
like McAfee.
Yeah. Well, yeah, really. I mean, Varg actually did pretty good compared to McAfee.
Right. At least it wasn't a documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate. But the Euronymous story is really crazy. How demented that man was. Like, or he was a boy, right? These are kids. These are
that's
like.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the point right there. You mentioned a microcosm, and that these are young men. We're talking kids between like 14 and 18. The scene, and a scene of like less than probably a couple dozen people at that time. So it's it's interesting. One of the things that people complain about with the movie is that they're making it seem like they were doing these things for fame and fortune, when really this was just like a small group of rocker teenagers who were trying to figure out what their worldview was and how to rebel against the status quo. And it just kind of all went overboard and all went a little bit too wrong. So I was just going to jump in and recommend that people, if they're interested in it, should check out the documentary called Until the Light Takes Us for a more serious view on it. I think that's a good starting point for anyone who's interested in what actually happened back then. So you could start there. I don't really recommend the Lords of Chaos book unless you're, really curious. And even then, I can only recommend like the first half of it, because the second half is just, I don't know, a little too politicized for my taste. But anyways, Until the Light Takes Us is a documentary where you can hear from a lot of the people that were involved in it. And I haven't seen Lords of Chaos yet. I think it came out this last week, but it's not playing in my city, so I'm going to have to find a download or a place I can purchase a rental online or something. But a lot of reviews are coming out. People are checking it out and posting to YouTube. On loudwire.com, their reporter talked to Jonas, the director of the movie, who's no slouch. He just directed a film called Polar that's on Netflix that's supposed to be good, which I haven't seen yet. And he's done a whole bunch of like high-end music videos. I think he's done like Madonna videos and Rammstein videos. So, and he was the drummer of Bathory. So he actually is, he has metal cred too. So there's the update on that. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Tristan.
Yeah, just like the last thing I wanted to say was, we talked about it being a microcosm, and there's definitely kind of a heavy Crowleyan aspect to a lot of the things that these guys were getting into back then. Just for example, the Euronymous guy apparently found. All right, so there was one member of this band, Mayhem, who ended up killing himself.
Dead.
His name was Dead, and he killed himself. But the way that he killed himself was particularly brutal. I don't even want to say it because it's really horrible the way that he actually did it. But Euronymous was apparently egging him on and kept, telling him how cool it would be if he was going to do this. I mean, it seemed like this was just the nihilistic worldview kind of playing itself out in the real world by people who at least had the balls to actually follow it through, right? A lot of the people, they talk about nihilism being really cool. They talk about Satanism being all cool and, you do whatever natural, man. It's we got to go back to nature. Like a lot of these neo-pagan people. But these guys, they went full steam at that, and it ended up just pretty crazy and demonic. This guy Euronymous found his friend's dead body, and apparently, so there was myths, there was legends that he cooked and ate the guy's brain and took. This is what people were saying. This was a legend. This was like probably bullshit, right? But he confirmed, all right, I gotta find. Not the brain eating. Apparently, he allegedly, according to this article, he confirmed that he sent out fragments of his skull and made necklaces of them for people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they made an album cover with.
There is a bootleg album. So here's the thing. This guy
sent the image.
He suicides in a very brutal way, and he's the singer of the band at the time. And Euronymous, the guitar player, one of the founding members, and the drummer, who goes by the name of Hellhammer, named himself after an old Swiss metal band. They were the ones that found his body, and there are legends that they did indeed do something with some of the body matter and made necklaces out of skull fragments.
Oh my!
And they also rearranged there was a knife and a shotgun at the scene, and they rearranged them in a way with his body and took a picture of it, and that was used on a very rare bootleg CD, Mayhem CD. And if you happen to own one of those, they're extremely valuable because the parents of this young man that suicided sued whoever made that bootleg, and it was recalled and all that gory business. So there are a small number of those bootlegs out there that are very valuable to collectors, and it's really gory. I happen to be one of those collectors. I have a copy of it. Yeah, I don't take it out often, but yeah, those guys, you're right, man. Those guys were not messing around. They took that stuff on, that nihilistic viewpoint, and really lived it, and it caused a lot of pain and suffering for a lot of family members, and it made for the stuff of legends that haven't gone away, so much so that the Norwegian government actually employs a metalhead to train their diplomats in the history of this, because they get so many questions at different embassies and stuff about it. And I interviewed that guy on Hessian's session a couple weeks back. So, if you want to check that out, you can check that out too. I asked him what he thought about the movie coming up, because he was friends with Euronymous. He was talking about being a 14-year-old and kind of copying Euronymous' style of music, and Euronymous got pissed at him and chewed him out for it, and they eventually became friends. It's a whole thing. But
and back to the movie that you were talking about, Until the Light
Takes Us.
Like, Norway is so well known for this that, like, when people arrive in the airport, like, they have a scene in the movie, like, people are like, they arrive there and they're like, black metal? Like, this is like the biggest, it's one of the biggest
exports
yeah, for the entire country.
There's a touring method style called black packing. You can go to Norway if you're a metalhead or interested in this, and you can go black packing, which is like, doing your best to tour around the places where these kids hung out and all that stuff. So crazy.
I feel like we should just kind of, for a moment, just pause and not get too deep into the bowels of Satan's throne. And remember that there are Valentine's cards with Paula Deen on them. And I'm showing my audience. And Paula Deen says, "You butter be my Valentine."
Oh, you butter, Ray.
And it's her on it, and it's her riding a stick of butter. But anyway, now commence with the invocations of the Dark Lord. Go ahead.
Good call, Jay. Yeah, let's actually move along. And while we're on a interruption,
by the way, I'm sorry. Can I bust in? Breaking news.
No, go ahead.
Breaking news. The Empire star Jussie Smollett. Police are now saying he staged his attack, which everybody already knew.
Was it? I'm not very familiar with the story. I did see a headline, but was it like
he claims that in the middle of the night in the dangerousest ghetto of the Chicago area, when it was 20 degrees, when they had their cold spate, that two MAGA hat wearing rednecks jumped out and attacked him and ran off.
Oh, geez. It's Povich over again.
Everybody said, no, we're not buying that. And he said, if you don't believe me, you're all racist. And then turns out the police are now saying he made it up. And everybody already thought that.
I misspoke. Not Maury Povich. Morton Downey Jr. Morton Downey Jr. did a similar stunt, except he kicked his own ass in a bathroom and then drew swastikas on the wall, pointing the wrong way, and tried to claim Nazis kicked his ass. Nazi skinheads beat him up.
Yeah, this refrain is not really working like it used to.
Right. Yeah.
Morton Downey went full on Edward Norton Jr.
On himself.
From what do you call it? Fight Club. Like where he threw himself through the glass table and acted like his boss beat him up or whatever.
Right. He sure did, and he got caught for it.
Yeah, well, all those Trump supporters running around the inner city streets of Chicago at 1 a.m. on a 20 degrees below, they're everywhere out there.
Yeah, that's a common street gang.
Hardcore, huh?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
It was Candace. It was Candace Owen. That's who it was. I'm joking. Candace Owen was out there in her MAGA hat with Kanye, and he just thought it was two redneck dudes, but it was actually two black people that attacked him.
That's right.
I'm such an idiot. I just looked up who Paula Deen is. I have to. You guys can make fun of me.
Oh my gosh! You ain't never had no butter and oil. Butter and oil. Well, so can I throw in one of the funniest YouTube videos of all time? Speaking of Paula Deen.
Yeah, go for it.
Gastro ghoul. It's the Paula Deen Gastro Ghouls and Fear Fritters video, which is one of the hardest I've ever laughed at a YouTube video. I'm gonna put it up. It has 500,000 views, but it still ranks up there in my funniest of all time videos. And it's her with Oprah, and it's in slow motion, and they have ominous Enya playing in the background, and them talking in slow motion sounds just really creepy and demonic. And then they start bouncing on a trampoline, and people are playing pig sounds while they're bouncing. It's literal, like, die laughing, crying type level stuff. So
that sounds more dark and horrific than all this freaking black metal stuff I had to learn
in ways
about
it
this
is.
week.
In ways it is. So I have it on the screen here. Everybody should go watch the Gastro Ghouls and Fear Fritters video with Paula Deen. It's hilarious.
Yeah, that will show you the true results of your nihilism, kids, millennials out there. You want to see what this ends up with?
So I have it linked, by the way, in the chat, and it'll be linked below the video, so people can easily access this masterpiece. Actually, this is I'm jealous that I didn't. There's a few things I'm jealous I never created and never. I'm jealous I didn't come up with Mystery Science Theater. I'll always be jealous of Joel Hodgson for that, and I'm jealous of the people that made this video.
I like
All
that.
right.
Fear Fritters. Fear Fritters sounds like an 8-year-old's metal band. The Fear Fritters.
It does.
And it's also a Paula Deen dish. Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna teach y'all about fear fritters.
We're gonna do some spirit cooking, y'all.
Yep, there you go.
She lost her job, didn't she?
She
like,
said the
ancient
N-word.
racist
She said the
comments?
N-word, and then she made up with Oprah. So see how that works.
Right.
She's like, no, I love Oprah. I'm not racist.
Oprah. I just go.
And the funniest part of this video too, other than the bouncing on the trampoline, is when they're fishing, and they go fishing at Oprah's estate or whatever, and Paula Deen starts grunting when she catches a fish. This is gold, dude. It's comic gold.
All right, excellent. We'll put that on the show notes tonight over at alternatecurrentradio.com. So when people go check that out, listen to the embed and all that stuff, show notes will be there with all these wacky videos and articles that we come up with over here in the Boiler Room, broadcasting live at alternatecurrentradio.com. I'm your host, Hesher. I'm here with Spore, celebrating Valentine's Day in Boiler Room Studios, Central Texas.
Happy Valentine's, everyone.
That's right. Happy Valentine's. And I'm joined tonight by Max, by Randy J, by Jay Dyer, Jamie Hanshaw, and Infidel Pharaoh, who it looks like had to sneak out the back room there. Infidel, thanks for joining us tonight. And, we had all kind of craziness going on before the show. So just having a light and loose sort of boiler room over here. Of course, we're simulcasting at the Jay Dyer YouTube channel tonight. Thanks, everybody over there on that YouTube stream for hanging out with us. And Tristan Haggard, of course, of Primal Edge Health, joining us once again in the Boiler Room. Definitely check out Primal Edge Health on YouTube and on the interwebs, and jaysanalysis.com on the interwebs. Get yourself signed up for all that good stuff. Get yourself some books. You can do all of that at these websites. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Where shall we head next? Randy J, what is going on in California, man? Are you still there? Is California still okay? You're our last remaining Californian in California.
Californians. Have you seen that Saturday Night Live skit?
Is it an old one or a new
It
one?
is. It's back in the Kristen Wiig days. The Californians. It's a good.
Yeah, with
Saturday Night Live skit.
the Portlandia guy. What's that guy's name again?
Fred Armisen.
Oh, yeah, Fred. No, I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, dude, anybody from California will love the Californian skit. It's great.
You know, what were really great skits was Kyle Mooney on his old YouTube channel did some skits about, I think it was like Inside SoCal.
That is great.
Those
yes,
are genius.
Yeah,
that's some of the hardest laughing I've ever done in my life was those Inside SoCal.
Yeah,
videos.
if you're a
Those
California person, exactly like Tristan said, watch the Inside SoCal skits and watch the Californians skits. Those are good.
Nice. I'm going to put those on the show notes too. Randy, what do you think, man? Are you still with us?
Yeah.
Are you broadcasting live from a mountaintop tonight, or are you homebound?
No, I'm at home. It's been raining every Thursday, like over here. It's like this Thursday and then the previous 2 Thursdays it's been raining, which is not common. It doesn't usually rain a lot at all. At least in Southern California, it doesn't. Not in the inland, I mean. But anyway, I was thinking about this newer thing of True Detective and where it was going, and I know we already talked about it, and then the Memphis 3 and all that, and I can't help but think that there's always like quote unquote little people that are victims of crimes and put out there. It's always sensationalized, the devil worship or the pedophilia, and all these other things. But if anyone's ever seen that documentary on FrankKlin child prostitution ring allegation stuff. The FrankKlin cover-up is basically what it's called. There's a great documentary on it, and I think there's a book on it as well. But that stuff's always been sort of dismissed whenever it leads to high-ranking officials. But whenever it's someone small, they go for the jugular and they lock them up and throw them in jail, even when there's no there, like the Memphis Three, who, if anyone's seen that documentary, what's the actual name of the documentary?
Paradise Lost.
Paradise Lost, right?
Now,
and
are you sure about that? Because go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add another little. I'm just sort of throwing a bunch of different thoughts out at once. No real coherent thought here, I guess. Apologize, but oh, by the way, that might have been the first of what's now becoming like these real popular sort of stories. They had one called The Staircase recently, and everyone knows the Stephen Avery one that's got real big. And then that might have been one of the first ones to do that sort of style of documentary, I guess, a version of reality TV, really. Anyways, it seems like on a lot of these, whenever someone's big involved, or if there's whispers of politicians, etc., it just sort of goes away and it gets chalked up to conspiracy theory. And whenever it's kids, and some of them may be whacked out in their own right, they go full court press in the court systems for it. Just interesting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, were you asking about Paradise Lost there?
Yeah, well, I don't have any set opinion on this because I haven't super studied it, but there are, two pretty hardcore views on this, and I was introduced to William Ramsey's stuff when I was on the Opperman Report a long time ago, so I listened to William Ramsey talk about it because he's a big proponent of them actually being guilty, and his argument is that because they are they might have been connected somehow to powerful people, that's why you have all these dubious Hollywood people supporting the West Memphis Three. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, why would they be supporting the West Memphis Three? Why is this such a big...
Johnny Depp has matching tattoos with one of the guys.
With Damien,
with the guy that was...
Yeah. So now I don't, because on the one hand I could see there being corrupt people who would pin this on kids, but at the same time I also see the possibility that they could easily be guilty as well. So I haven't followed everything from William Ramsey, but this is a pretty heated issue. And the reason I quit following it was because I think at one point I'd listened to like 6 different interviews on it, and it was getting to the point of people comparing like police notes, and it's just like, how could anybody even follow this? Like, unless you're like a specialist. But I think Ramsey's a lawyer, so I think that's why he knows where he can focus and what he can and can't say. But anyway, I don't really know what the answer is to that. I don't have a set opinion. What do you guys think about it?
What does Opperman think? Because I've heard some of his interviews. He's had some good interviews. The Opperman Report, that's what it's called, right? What did he think about West Memphis 3, Jay?
I don't remember I think he seemed, if I recall, I don't want to speak for him, but it seems like he was siding with what William Ramsey was saying, but I'm not positive on that. I haven't listened to Opperman in a while since he was kind of promoting like climate change stuff, so I kind of tuned out of Opperman.
Yeah, he goes weird on some issues for sure, but he had a few good interviews.
Oh yeah, there's actually a lot of good interviews on Opperman Report.
Yeah, I agree. He's pretty good. He does a good show, and I only just recently dove back into this case of the West Memphis Three, and when I did so, I came across some of that double reverse inverted conspiracy theory stuff, where it was like, why is all this Hollywood money going into getting these guys released, and the things that, because there's 3 episodes of Paradise Lost. There's Paradise Lost, the child murders at Robin Hood Hills, and then there's Paradise Lost 2, Revelations, and Paradise Lost 3, Purgatory, and there's been like millions of dollars donated to this cause and these movies,
and it's all these satanic people that are donating the money and stuff.
No, not all of them. I mean, like James
Marilyn Manson, and this guy super good friends.
Yeah, but I mean, Marilyn Manson and James Hetfield are not like full-on Satanists. You know what I mean?
Marilyn Manson is a full-on Satanist. Come on, Marilyn Manson's satanic?
No, he's not. I mean, he's a shock rocker. He's a shock rocker, and of course, he's anti-religious. He's anti-establishment. Pretty much anything that's anti-establishment, he'll latch onto for shock value. But I mean, and he did. There's like all this rumor and stuff about how he was ordained by Anton LaVey and all this stuff. And yeah, he did meet with LaVey a few times, but I mean, he's not worshiping any horned lords below. If anything, he's worshiping the powdered white god, mostly.
And pussy.
Yeah, more just like the nihilist, degenerate sort of lifestyle. But I don't believe that he's like a true Satanist or even a LaVey Satanist. I don't buy into that any more than like King Diamond is.
I imagine his lifestyle is very similar to John McAfee's.
Yeah. When it comes right down to it, they might be buds.
The only thing I could say, what?
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you about it. You're getting ready to answer, but I know I read it somewhere, and you and I may have read it in the same source, but I read somewhere, and I just wish I could remember where, that he belonged to a lodge in California called the Agape Lodge or the Solar Lodge or something like that. I don't know if it was an OTO lodge or what it was supposed to be.
I don't know about Marilyn Manson doing that. Not that I can recall. The only thing I could think of
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm thinking of Charles Manson. I don't know if I'm thinking of Charles Manson or Marilyn Manson.
No, I don't think Charles was in any lodges. He was just a loon, but Charles went from Scientology to being, the crazy hippie cult leader guy. But the only thing I could think of that would vindicate a degree of seriousness on the part of Marilyn Manson would be the section in his autobiography where he does say that he saw the abortion as a legitimate sacrifice. So now whether he was just saying that in the autobiography for shock value or whether he took that seriously or what, I guess that could be debated. But I'm not an expert on Marilyn Manson, so I don't. I haven't really followed his career too closely.
Yeah, I'm no expert on him either. I mean, I'm not trying to speak for him, but I am an expert on shock rock, and I know that those people will say and do anything to get a reaction from people, and they really thrive on that. So it makes it very difficult. And Marilyn's always been pretty good about keeping his politics and philosophies to himself and expressing himself through his art. His paintings and his music and his acting and directing. So he plays, what he really thinks pretty close to the chest, I believe, similar to like a Alice Cooper sort of character, even though Alice Cooper is a little bit more out there these days with what he thinks. He's actually a staunchly religious guy. But that's the thing with shock rock. It's really hard to say when they're being serious and when they're just trying to get a reaction, get a rise from people.
Yeah, by the way, I just looked it up. It was Charles Manson who belonged to the Solar Lodge of the OTO.
Charles Manson? I've never heard that. Really?
Yeah, I just looked it up. I just looked it up online and doing a Google search, but I know I read it in a book at one point.
Well,
I don't know.
What's the source?
It might have been. Sorry?
Oh, I've seen this site before. The Koenig guy.
Religion is where it first popped up.
Okay, yeah, I see it. Okay,
but
I must have forgotten that if I knew that. That's interesting. And I think they're citing Ed Sanders, so that's a pretty well-known book on the family. But I haven't read that book. I've only read a couple of the other well-known Manson books, but I do have a couple super chats. I want to remind people too that we will be taking super chats, so please be magnanimous with your super chatting, and we will answer your super chats on air. And we got about 3 or 4. We don't have to do that right now. I'm just reminding people that we will be taking super chats, and I'll split it with the Boiler Room crew.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take them real soon here, just to kind of come full circle on Paradise Lost. There is, I only recently became aware that, these arguments like you heard on the Opperman report are out there, and I was intrigued by it, but I ended up in the exact same place that you did, Jay, where it was like, what am I going to have to turn into a documentary filmmaker and an investigative journalist, spend 5 years on this topic to come to some conclusion of my own? It's a shame because, once again, like Randy was saying, we're dealing with young kids that lost their lives to some sick fuck out there. And we've got, 2 competing narratives with multiple sub-narratives that make it like an unsolvable mystery. And I can really see why True Detective is able to riff on this case after, all of the stuff that's gone into this. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And I don't remember if that was Tristan or Max, but like one of you guys was saying, there's $1 million people that have donated into getting these young men. Well, they're not even young men anymore. I think they spent 18 years in prison, all 3 of them released and exonerated. So it sucks, man. It totally sucks. And what it does is it has that exact effect you guys were talking about, where it just becomes so sensational and so much mud in the water that, normies out there throw their hands up and they're like, well, this, it can't be true. But I mean, I think it was Busta in our chat over here at Alternate Current Radio who threw in reminding us that just last year, August 14th of 2018, the New York Times is saying that Catholic priests abused 1,000 children in Pennsylvania.
He adjusted that to 100.
Well, I'm sorry, say that again, Spore.
Busta said that it turned out to be a 100, not 1,000.
Well, I'm looking at the New York Times article, and if it's been changed, perhaps it has, but the New York Times article from last year still says Catholic priests abused 1,000 children in Pennsylvania, and it's talking about Pennsylvania covering up child sex abuse by more than 300 priests over a period of 70 years.
It was hundreds.
So
it was. It's the higher number is correct. And it was like 100 or 200 just in Texas. So that's just state by state. It's not total. And this has been coming out for a decade, though. I mean, at least a decade since internet, news has been going. Because I was studying that topic 10 years ago when I was still attending traditional Catholic Mass. So that was one of the big controversies even then was, all of the rampant abuse stories that were just starting to break back in the mid-2000s. And I read William Kennedy's book on it, and I read a whole bunch of books actually in the mid-2000s just on that topic. But another example too, I want to just throw in while I'm thinking about it, because I actually did read Michelle Remembers, and Michelle Remembers is actually what kicked off the Satanic Panic. But if you read that book, what I detected was a clear instance of either exaggeration, sensationalism, or intentional disinfo. So I actually think I have a unique take on this, which is that the truth is kind of in the middle, where there actually have been satanic groups and networks that did do real stuff, and there's also intentional sensationalism that made it look goofy and silly. And if you look at this woman and her history, it sounds ridiculous. And some of the stories she tells in the book are pretty ridiculous. The Michelle Remembers book. But it's just like the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. That was started by and founded by some of the frauds and con men who were intentionally trying to diffuse and confuse and obfuscate. Deceive, inveigle, and obfuscate, right, from X-Files.
Yeah.
So, but I think that when we look at the other situations where there was real evidences of this with the Catholic Church, with Saville, with stuff with Penn State, there's a mix of the sensationalized BS and there's the real at the same time, and people get confused, and but there's an element of truth to all of these different angles on it, because humans do different things, and sometimes they lie, sometimes they just sensationalize. Sometimes people may actually just be wanting money from the church. That doesn't mean that there's not rampant sexual abuse in the Roman Catholic Church. There is. But you see, that doesn't mean, in other words, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to every one of these cases.
Right. And there's lots of sick people out there, sick, damaged people who were abused themselves as young people, who have grown up to be, things that a lot of us can't even imagine. So it's also a case of sexual predators and people that want to do violence against weaker people gravitating to positions like churches and Boy Scout troops and stuff like that. Exactly. So there's a whole mishmash.
And we've seen the abuse being systemic across establishments and systems. It's not unique to schools. It's not unique to the Catholic Church. It's also, we saw this last week, Southern Baptists now have a 700 case accusation thing going over the last several decades. It's Hollywood. It's all these different institutions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
By the way, guys, if you don't mind me jumping in here for a second,
go for it, Max.
I discovered a Rolling Stones story on Marilyn Manson from 2015, and it says that he received basically an honorary degree from Anton LaVey, making him a quote-unquote reverend in the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
And then it just says that as a result, Manson ended up penning the foreword to LaVey's book, Satan Speaks.
Yeah, that is true, and he talked about that in his biography. And what young shock rocker would not love for that to happen? When I was a young metalhead, I used to actually, after concerts, I'm probably going to lose a bunch of listeners for admitting this, but after concerts, sometimes my friends and I would go to the Denny's in Daly City on the way home for coffee in hopes that Anton would be there back before he died. We wanted to meet this guy.
No luck, though.
No luck. We never ran into him. He would be so easy to spot.
His bald head.
Yeah, exactly. Let me touch that chrome dome, Anton.
Going back to the West Memphis 3, I don't know that much about it, but I've seen one documentary. I forget what it was called. I'm not sure if it was one that Hesher was talking about. But to me, it seemed very likely that they could have. I mean, there were some confession-type tapes, and these kids basically admitting to these crimes initially. And there were some weird things that went on with the trial as well, and a lot of witness testimony that was pretty interesting. I don't remember all the details, but I remember coming out of it thinking that it was very likely that they were guilty. It seemed to me like these kids were they got into this type of stuff. They got kind of bloodthirsty, and it seemed to me like it was likely that they were guilty. And the whole angle of Hollywood coming to the rescue and all that just seems, I don't know. It seems like it could be something bigger than just what's on the surface, right? Guys like Johnny Depp, wasn't Winona Ryder involved too with this whole situation? There were a lot of people who were vouching for them for a long time, and it just seemed odd. The obsession with saving these poor little, the little satanic scapegoats. We've got to save them. It just seems odd. So,
well, the counter to that argument is that they were coerced. Number one, that they were not, at least one of them, or maybe all three, I'm not sure, were not exactly the sharpest tools in the toolbox, if you will, not the brightest bulb in the box, but that they were like grilled heavily for like hours and hours and hours, and told that they had to admit this with no access to a lawyer. Like, there's all these counter arguments, and it's like Jay was saying, it's really hard to know for sure like what the real truth is here when you've got this documentary series that's pushing that side of the argument, and then you've also got the footage of them one or two of them admitting it, but you don't see the like hours of duress that they may or may not have been put under and what they were told. They go in.
There was one clip of one of the alleged perpetrators or whatever describing the crimes talking about the stabbings and talking about actions that the other guy was taking. I don't know. It was a pretty crazy documentary. I forget what it was called. It must have been the one you were talking about. Guys Lost or whatever.
Probably. I don't even know if I've seen all three of them. I mean, the first one is so long, and like you just walk away from it feeling dirty. It's like,
yeah, it's really dark. I mean, it's nothing that anybody wants to think about, but I don't know. I think that's part of the how these people kind of get off to, rubbing things in people's faces. Well, I don't know. I think the world of like real Satanism, it does exist, and there are people who go really deep into it and do some really debauch things to themselves and other people. And I think there's a lot of people wanting to get in on it and that are willing to go there. And especially with the nihilistic culture we have, with television glorifying all this stuff, we're going to see a lot more of these weird crimes.
Well, and
from young kids probably.
Think about it just from a power structure vantage point. If you're looking for ripe patsies and dupes and people to use, what better way to compromise people than these kinds of situations? So even if you didn't believe in the spiritual aspect ultimately behind a lot of these things, which ultimately I do, but even if a person was skeptical of that, you could look at it just from the pragmatic standpoint of ways to entrap people and kind of get dirt on them or lock them into some cult where they could be used or tools. I mean, how many times have we seen cults be tools of intelligence agencies? And so, what do you have with a bunch of teenagers or people that are being inducted into something that they think gives them power or makes them special? That's an easy way to use that group, just as people in the power structure might use another group like a radicalized mosque or a radicalized cult, a radicalized militia group, right? I mean, that's perfect pickings, prime pickings if you're looking to use people, if you're a Fed or something. And so it's not any.
I mean, even if you just look at like the psychopathic hierarchies of government, like House of Cards, right? Exactly. I mean, it's all about compromising people, right? It was all about Frank Underwood just destroying people and using them. So, yeah, I mean,
that brings me to
imagine that plus a little bit of black metal.
That brings me to the next question, the super chat, which is relevant to this, which is from DC Customs 2016. Thank you for that. What are your thoughts on fetishizing of Ted Bundy? Now, Bundy actually was into the occult, and he would actually rock back and forth, like acting. He thought he would watch The Exorcist 3 like on repeat. He would just kind of rock back and forth watching this, and he actually did. He actually did do invocations, and he had an altar and all this stuff. And I think Dave includes Bundy in a section in his book, Program to Kill. So that could also suggest that Bundy played a role. But the question, of course, is about the fetishization of the serial killers by Hollywood, going back to like Dexter and that kind of stuff, or even back to Hannibal and the Hannibal series, the books and the movies. Manhunter was the old one, which is a pretty good movie. Yes, there is definitely an esoteric occult aspect to that. And I think that it is fetishized on purpose. And in fact, we did a few old afternoon commutes with John and Chris where we talked about, I think, the fetishization of the serial killer and putting him up as this kind of narcissistic model. And because I don't know if you guys know, but it's been in the news that Netflix is saying, please don't sexualize Ted Bundy. We know that you want to, hump this serial killer. And supposedly all these girls were saying he's hot, which that could all be made up. They could have just started that as like a marketing.
Like, here's Dexter. Here's sexy Dexter.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
How many seasons?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, it's true.
Well, I think the actual Manson had like a big like following.
Oh, he had chicks. A lot of these serial killers
like,
did
lined up to like marry him and stuff for like 30 years while he was in jail.
Give up. You can't marry me because I'm already married to your mind.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. Especially, it's very timely too because Netflix is currently running the Bundy tapes. What they're calling the Bundy tapes right now. I believe it's
boring show ever.
I believe it's 4 episodes. Spore was totally bored by it, but I thought it was somewhat revelatory. And I'm only 2 of 4 episodes in, and to be quite honest, I got the impression, and maybe I'll change my mind by the time I finish the series, but I really was starting to question whether he actually did all of those murders on his own, because the way they were discussing the location that all these bodies were found.
That's the thing.
Like,
So that's Dave's thesis, exactly.
Yeah, I thought of Dave immediately when we were watching it, because it's like they're trying to play it off. And you're right. Back to the Super Chatter's question there. Netflix is actually playing into the fact that Bundy is sexy. Like, they're the ones
yes, that's what I'm saying. They're doing it on purpose, right?
He doesn't care what like anybody thinks. He's just gonna eat babies and stuff. He's so hot. He doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks, dude. This is fucking awesome.
You know what? The show is interesting. The reason I find it boring is because there have been other Netflix series where they talk about certain serial killers, like the chest blow up guy. Oh, what was that one called?
I don't remember. The guy the pizza bomber that put a bomb around the delivery guy's neck and blew him up. Yeah,
that one was super interesting. This Ted Bundy one, there was nothing. I mean, literally, I cannot think of. I don't know how many episodes we watched, but I cannot think of one instance where they had anything that actually made him seem like guilty. Like, it was all
like fawning over him or something.
It wasn't even. It was like a lot of like coincidences and like pointing fingers and conflation. It was not. There was not a single thing that.
Well, it was in a time when they didn't have like access to the same kind of forensic DNA evidence as they do now, and it was weird that. Okay, so if you're out there and you're a Boiler Room listener, you're a Jay's Analysis listener, any of our other colleagues around here, if you're a longtime listener, you're probably to the point now where you look at the way the media reports on things with a lot of skepticism.
Exactly.
And I was like watching these old news reports from the 70s when this was going on, and I'm just thinking, man, if I saw this today, I would immediately be suspicious of this. Like, it just was so sensational and overblown, and it's like they knew they were looking for a guy named Ted and
with a VW bug.
Yeah,
back in the 70s. How rare is that in the 70s?
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Bug.
I was just going to say it's exactly like, and I think McGowan gets into this too, the Night Stalker from Southern California over here, Richard Ramirez, in court, all dramatically, saying "Hell, Satan." I mean, it's and if you hear those reports now, they do. All of it seems very over the top, and they did have like people. That's sort of the transition time of when kids are starting to not go outside as much, and this type of thing, and you're not trusting of your neighbors as much. And it reminds me of what Jay said earlier. This stuff happens, or there's weirdos out there, but then it's overblown and sensationalized for like other purposes. And that whole thing, the Hillside Strangler and all that from, I guess, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, all of it took off at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So, and the other thing that kind of bugged me about this Bundy documentary is I'm getting some slapback. I can't tell if someone's on a speaker or something.
I'm on mute.
All right.
I'm about to.
Okay. Okay.
My mic did, and I just push it when I need to talk.
All right. Yeah, there we go. I think it was Max. I saw Max just go on mute, and it went away. Thank you, Max. The other thing that was bugging me about this, the Bundy situation, was when they found like the cache of all the corpses. There were corpses from Alaska, from Colorado, from Utah, Washington. I think there was a California one. I mean, we're talking hundreds of miles all told. So we're to believe this guy's driving around with like all these corpses in his VW Bug. He's driving all the way from Anchorage, Alaska, back to Utah to ditch a corpse. I mean, that seems really fishy to me, and the way that the media like blew him up. And it's not just Netflix that's saying, oh, he was, you know, a smooth talker and people thought he was sexy. Like, they were saying that back in the 70s when they were taking him to court. Like, the media was kind of, you know, big up in him for being eloquent and handsome, you know. And it's just, I don't know, the whole thing seems really fishy to me.
I caught part of that episode. I'm not watching it. I'll just say that it's on every now and then where my place. And I caught part of it that I heard it say that he was like seriously like going to be in politics, and that portion of it sort of made me maybe sort of want to watch it. Like, was he being like groomed for something else or what? I don't know if you've seen that episode.
I did, yeah, and I think that goes back to what Jay was just pointing out, that, you know, what better a group of people to pull from cultish, you know, whatever, inner circles and Eyes Wide Shut clubs, or, you know, whatever, you know, these things are in this case. What better group of people to pull from than a narcissistic psycho who is into occult stuff and, you know, Crowleyistic stuff and fancies himself
they
a
want
politician.
everyone to be, right? Like, you got Jay-Z and Beyonce doing all this, you know, ritualistic weird stuff all the time. Jay-Z wearing the Crowley shirt. It's like they want all society to be these little Crowleyan, you know, do what thou wilt, feed my own illusion and ego, worship, whatever.
By the way, somebody, there's a kind of a weird channel that has made a bunch of little mini documentaries, and it's like 200 parts, and each part is like 7 or 8 or 10 minutes. It's a channel called LOL Field and Love. I'll put it up here on the screen, but basically they took Dave's book and they put it into, not the text of the book, but they took quotes from Dave's book and they just posted like countless interviews of these old serial killers and cults and this kind of stuff. So I've watched about, I don't know, 10 or 15 of the videos, because there's a ton of them. There's like, it just goes on and on and on. But if anybody wants to really dig into an interesting archived footage version of the stuff that Dave talks about, it's on this channel, and you can kind of just veg out on, it's pretty dark stuff, but you can veg out on this channel. Well, I cut it off here, but if you just Serial Killers Part 1, Programmed to Kill, the video will come up, and it's a series of about 150 little clips. It's pretty lengthy.
I think what a lot of people are missing in the conversation is we need to have compassion for these demons, because they have different culture. They're coming from a different culture, and in their culture, they want to drink blood. They want to eat feces, and they want to do it, and they want to be proud about it. So we should just embrace them.
You know what I like about Tristan's millennial shithead is that it's like it's painful for them to pronounce all the vowels. It's painful to pronounce all the vowels. It's like they won't say their vowels.
You can't really move the back of your tongue because you've taken so many drugs.
It's like too lazy to actually enunciate. Yeah, please don't enunciate the word. Don't make me enunciate all my syllables.
All right. Yes. Okay. That was a great question from the super chats there, Jay. Do you have any others?
We do. A couple more. John Goris, $5. Thank you, John. Where does Devo fit into? Was Devo Tavistock? What do you think? We did actually a discussion again on Afternoon Commute some years back, 4 years ago or so, where we covered New Wave, and at the end of Dave's book, there's a chapter on the rise of New Wave, and he speculates that New Wave also probably had the same kind of CIA type of funding in the background, just like the 60s hippie revolution did, because if you follow the work of John Adams, he did several talks with me and others on suspicious aspects of the punk movement being steered as an experiment in social engineering. And so obviously the same kind of idea comes to the fore with Stuart Copeland and the rise of a lot of the new wave artists, and obviously Devo would fit into that. So I don't know that it would necessarily directly be connected to Tavistock per se, but there would definitely be a connection to social engineering and the CIA through Stuart Copeland, and that is towards the end of Dave's book, Inside the Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. And the last super chat is from Miscellaneous BS, $2. Thank you. I'm suspicious that Drudge is a shill for Netflix. I think Drudge just puts out whatever is the, going headline, whatever he thinks will get the traffic, probably. But he could have a relationship with Netflix. I don't know.
Yeah, Netflix is a many-headed Hydra with mini Cthulhu tentacles coming out of the faces of the Hydras. So who knows? That is interesting, though, about Devo. I never thought about that before, but I follow on my IG account. I follow a guy from an independent record label, a UK independent record label, Earache Records, and he does these 2-minute talks every day. And today, someone asked him. This is the label that brought up early death metal bands like Deicide and Morbid Angel and stuff like that. And this one of his followers asked him, how did grunge music affect metal? And his answer was kind of interesting because he actually started referencing Social Distortion. So Social Distortion was on a major label, and Social D, one of the people from Social D were the ones that went to Caroline or Capitol. I can't remember what big label brought Nirvana onto the scene, but they said, hey, these guys are going to be huge, you got to sign them. And the label was like, no, this isn't going to be popular. Stadium Rock at that point was like Def Leppard and Guns N' Roses and stuff. But the interesting thing to me was he pointed out that when Nirvana did hit, they got the deal at that point, just because Social D brought them to the label and insisted they were going to be huge. And of course the label was like, no, they're going to sell maybe 2,000 copies. We're not going to go all in on this. But then they did blow up and get huge, and all of a sudden, like back in these days, what happened when a band would come up like that and blow up is there were armies of what they would call A&R reps, and A&R reps would just from every major record label would go out and they would start trying to, they'd travel basically all month, all year round, looking for other bands that fit that same sort of mold. So and these are people that have big expense accounts, and they're connected to these giant record labels. So I guess the point is, when a new genre would come around, especially back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s, there were fat walleted A&R reps that would go around and try to find other bands. And what a great way to have that trickle down effect from that, Fortune 100 entertainment industry into, music culture. I mean, you can just kind of picture the way that this would happen. Just give these young people a ton of money for sounding like they fit a certain bill, hoping that they're going to find the next Nirvana or whatever like that. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of these young artists, I think, would be very susceptible to stuff like you're talking about, and I could see how New Wave could fit right into that potentially.
Oh, absolutely. Joe Rogan has done interviews with both Shirley Manson from Garbage and Billy Corgan, and Billy Corgan kind of said the same type of thing. I mean, he wasn't necessarily saying, "Oh, the CIA was interested in promoting, grunge and Smashing Pumpkins to steer the youth," but he talks about it just more in the legal and money terms. But the same principle is still kind of there, that the bands are chosen, because they think, oh, we can bank on this. And the Billy Corgan Joe Rogan interview is worth listening to, just to kind of get an inside view on how the music scene worked in the 90s. I thought it was pretty pretty revelatory. And Shirley Manson from Garbage kind of says the same thing in her Joe Rogan interview. So just from the money standpoint, what you're saying is right. But there is also that angle that most people just don't even touch on, which is the bigger scale kind of social engineering. And the same thing goes for techno. You know, they study techno, and I don't doubt that. Which again, I'm a fan of electronic and techno, so I don't hate the entire genre or think that it's all nonsense. I think there can be some pretty neat techno, but I do recognize and I admit that this also kind of comes out of a lot of establishment mindset type stuff to replace old music with synthetic music. Again, it's not that it has to be either or, but we do have, you know, in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, he does say that all the music is synthetic, made with computers. In the Brave New World, you don't actually play or learn to play instruments anymore. You just listen to pre-programmed beats. So yeah, so I recognize that, you know, even liking electronic music, but there's no doubt that, you know, the whole rave culture, the whole global trance scene, that's all 100% part of globalism. It's a big way of fostering globalism, and that's where that actually ties into the primitivism that, you know, that DMT and the whole ayahuasca crowd promotes, that Tristan talks about. That ties very closely into global DJs, global trance. You're listening to trance around the world, right? And then everybody's like,
Terrence McKenna was heavily involved in the rave scene, and he was basically going to these raves and telling all these kids to blow up their head out on MDMA and mushrooms, while at the same time he was freaked out to even take mushrooms anymore, since he had a bad trip and saw how fucked up he really was back in the 80s. So he stopped taking mushrooms years ago. He hadn't dosed on mushrooms, and he was telling people to mega dose. He hadn't done it in years. How funny is that? But you know what? You know what else ties this in really well? Courtney Love's father. Have you heard some of the interviews with him? No? Okay, so Courtney Love's father he worked heavily with the Grateful Dead, and he was basically like a handler for the Grateful Dead, and he would procure that. He was feeding them. He would procure them, you know, masseuses and stuff like that on the road. He was traveling with them for a long time, really good friends with all the guys from the Grateful Dead, and he also worked for Lockheed Martin. At times he claims he worked for Lockheed Martin, and several other military contractors, and yeah, so he's got a really interesting past as well. Courtney Love's father. I forget the guy's actual name, but he did interviews with Opperman. He did a couple interviews with Opperman that were interesting.
Well, we have at 21 Wire, we have one of our homeboys that is an aficionado of this very case. Sean Helton is kind of the man, the go-to guy on the Kurt Cobain stuff. And in fact, we did an interview a long time ago, like right when I was starting to first consistently upload audio stuff on YouTube, and I think it's like 2015. I'll pull it up here. It's Hidden Hollywood, the Cobain Murder and the Occult, Jay Dyer on Sunday Wire, and I think he actually interviews the detective, Sean does, in that pretty hardcore interview. And Sean has written a whole bunch of really long essays, and I think he even did an interview with who's that guy that's on Law and Order? Richard Belzer, who has an interest in conspiracy theories. I think Sean did an interview with Richard Belzer, didn't he, at one time? Hesher, do you know?
That sounds familiar. Yeah, I think he might have.
Yeah.
And yeah, his work on the Cobain case is phenomenal. So if anyone's not familiar with that, it relates to there's a documentary you can watch, a 2015 documentary called Soaked in Bleach.
That's it.
And yeah, it's really interesting, and it details the events leading up to Kurt Cobain, his death as seen through the eyes of Tom Grant. And Tom Grant, he's done a couple interviews with Tom Grant, who was the private detective that was originally hired by Courtney Love to find Cobain. Shortly after his death, he was missing for a few days, and the movie explores the premise that Cobain's death was not a suicide. So it's pretty interesting. And Courtney's father claims, I think he's like an estranged father, claims that he can prove that she was responsible for Kurt Cobain's death. His name is Hank Harrison.
He was in that movie, wasn't he?
I think he was in Soaked in Bleach. Yeah.
Yeah, it was shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking, and the Hollywood side, the big budget side, put out a movie just before Soaked in Bleach came out, I think, to sort of whitewash it and pull the wool over most people's eyes, and that's called Montage of Heck.
Whoa.
And Montage of Heck is awful. Like, so many people say, "Oh, I saw Montage of Heck. It's so great." It just really describes like what Kurt was going through and what his psyche was like. And I will say I can't talk for this guy, but Buzz Osborne from the Melvins was buddies with Kurt, and he's on record as saying that whole vibe, that whole mood, he was broody, he was suicidal, all these things.
A bunch of heroin.
Yeah, drugging. He says all that was not true, and
he was very clean.
He was clean at the time. He was loving. He was into his daughter, and he was trying to separate from Courtney. And
he was trying to get healthy. He was trying to get healthy, was the story. You know what's crazy? Courtney's dad was like an LSD type guy too. So he would say his job, and I forget what the job title was, but he used to help people who were having bad trips on acid back when all this acid was flown around in the 60s and 70s and in the scene at that time. So he was kind of connected to a lot of these MK Ultra type ideas and people. So and also Kurt Cobain used to hang out with Ginsberg.
Mm-hmm.
And there are pictures of him at Ginsberg's home. So there's some weird connections. I don't know what to make of any of that, but it's just some really weird connections to all this stuff.
Well, you should listen to the interview that I've got posted there, Tristan. You'd find that really interesting, and that Sean did. But that's it for Super Chats, and I think we're going to have to call it a night on our end.
Yeah, probably perfect timing to close out over here. Also, it looks like we've just about hit the 2-hour mark, considering the technical difficulties we had getting kicked off. I'll go around the room real quick, and I'll start with you, Jay. Jay, thanks for being here tonight. Really fun show. Entertaining, and another jaunt down crazy Hollywood Boulevard here with you. Any final thoughts or upcoming projects or links and shout-outs you'd like to give?
I think this week I'm going to post a little thing on Suspiria. This new one, I did not recommend it. It's really gross, probably the grossest movie ever. Yuck. And
yuck.
I will be putting up a little video on analysis that we did on the original Suspiria, especially given the weird stuff with Asia Argento that's come out. That's all very interesting. And I might do a few more philosophy streams this week, and if I can get through enough Utopia, maybe Tristan and I can hook up on doing a stream on that, or we can wait till Boiler Room, or however we want to do it. But I think
well, since they watched it too, maybe we should do it.
Let's all do it.
A Boiler Room special.
Yeah, sounds good. We're into it.
And we can talk about the first TV show based around predictive programming. I feel like meta level of predictive programming. Anyway, now that's all for me. And if you would go to Jay's Analysis, you can buy my books there. Subscribe to the show. You get regular updates, lectures, archives, and all that. And yes, also for subscribers, we will be next. I'm trying to work my way still through areas that I'd not read in Alex Abea's book, Soldiers of Reason, the Rand Corporation, and the Rise of the American Empire. So that is what we're doing next. I've read a good bit of it, but I want to make sure I have it all perfectly down so I can be speaking with expertise on the subject of the Rand Corporation for all those Jay's Analysis subscribers this week.
All right, excellent. And give the mic over to Jamie, or maybe on her behalf, just shout out her books. Either way you want to go there.
Yep, Jamie's books, Operation Culture Creation, Hollywood Mind Control. You can find those at Freeman's website, freemanfly.com, I think. But if you Google her books, it'll come up, and you can buy Jamie's books directly from her. It's always better to do it that way, if you would, from their website than Amazon. Nobody does good on Amazon, so that's Jamie's stuff. And God bless you guys. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you very soon.
All right. Likewise, thanks for joining us, Jay. Thanks all the Jay Dyer nerds over there at YouTube for joining us for Boiler Room live here at AlternateCurrentRadio.com, simulcasting at the Jay Dyer YouTube channel. And thank you, Jamie, for joining us too. It's always great to hear you in the Boiler Room. All right. Over.